Thank you very much, Graham. A compelling case for Mauritius. I would be moving there immediately, but I already live on Southend-on-Sea by the beach, so it's, the appeal of Mauritius is less than it might be for others in the audience. It's with great pleasure I introduce Richard Putley, the co-founder and CEO of Executives in Africa. As Minister for Africa, if I wanted to know who was hiring, who was restructuring, who was going into a country in a big way, Richard and Sarah would be the people to call and would know. So for those looking to recruit, or indeed those looking to be selected for posts across the continent, both as expatriates but also inpats within country, it's a great firm to go to. Richard started his career as a chartered accountant before moving into financial recruitment, and has over 25 years experience managing the recruitment process across all sectors: commerce, industry, sales, marketing, IT, HR, and finance. And there is no country in Africa too big or too small for them not to be involved in, and probably already have been involved in. So, Richard, can you come forward and present us your wares? I'm looking forward to listening. Thank you.
Good morning, and good morning to you that are here in the auditorium today, but also those that are joining us online. At the beginning of the year, I was talking to an investor about his business and the challenges that he was having in operating on the continent. I would have preferred to be able to tell you that I was sat in a luxurious London restaurant, but as we know, at the beginning of this year, that would have been absolutely impossible. The reality, and I'm sure you can all relate to this at the beginning of the year, that I was sat at my desk at home, trying to keep the cat away from the screen and his tail appearing in the corner, and stop the dog from barking at the Amazon delivery, the third one of the morning. And also struggling with the broadband that was being used both by me and also by my neighbours working from home, as well as them educating their children. After discussing his organisations, I made this comment, which was, I believe your leaders are your ultimate impact investment. He replied with a smile, and he said to me, "Of course you'd say that, Richard. That's your job, replacing my leaders with other people. That's how you make your living." He said, "There are lots of elements that I invest my time in when I'm making my decision to make an investment. Ultimately, the potential return that I'm going to get from the business, and how easy is it to exit the country with the money that we've made. The sector that it's operating in, and its alignment with other businesses in my portfolio. The stability of the region, the local economy, and the government. Critical when you look at places like Tunisia and Mali recently last year that obviously have had challenges. Liquidity. How easy is it to actually get currency for the business to operate if they're importing? How do I export the funds? The embedded management team that exists within the operations. More often than not, there can be some involvement of family members that will need to be retained within the organisation once potentially we replace the CEO with somebody that you're going to provide. Oh, and let's not forget the C word. And what would happen if there was another global pandemic? God forbid that should happen. I agree with him that these were all vital elements and time should be spent on considering them when assessing before any investment's made. But with the right leader, I believe that all of these risks can be mitigated and managed, ensuring that the business not only survives, but also thrives, and delivering the returns that you need from your investment. Let me give you an example. Back in 2015, there was a CEO that we identified for a portfolio business for a private equity company that was operating in Nigeria. The business was operating in a highly competitive market, challenged by the availability of raw materials and also getting the currency to be able to purchase them because most of them were imported, as well as the challenges faced over foreign currency and actually exporting that from the country. This, amongst other things, were the challenges that this business was facing. But as a direct result of this individual being hired for the role and him operating within that business, in the period of time that he was there, certainly within, and he's still there now, but within the period of time when he started, he moved the business from languishing in a number 2 position to a number 1 position, both in terms of both profitability and also market share, delivered both sustainable profit and growth, as well as delivering environmental, social and governance impact. The business itself was set up with an independent whistleblowing division to enable people to report on what was happening in the organisation if they weren't happy with it, as well as it being ABC compliant. It was one of the first Nigerian businesses under his stewardship that was to receive the international IMS ISO accreditation for the processes and also the product that it produced. He established within the organisation an MBA scheme, which he did in conjunction with the Lagos Business School, training the senior middle management, as well as a graduate training scheme being offered to the younger members of the newer members of the team. This drove the business to continue to be the employer of choice and therefore able to attract and also retain the talent that they were looking for. This led, amongst other things, to, in this organisation, both in 2017 and in 2019, being recognised by the London Stock Exchange as a company to inspire Africa. Great accolade indeed. So amongst this and other numerous examples that we can give you of leaders that we've identified for our clients, I believe it goes some way to prove that your leaders are your ultimate impact investment. Unfortunately, we've spoken to owners of businesses that have not looked to replace, come to us and looking to replace the leaders for whatever reason, have not given the right mix of, don't have the right mix of skills, expertise and motivation, and the impact they've had on the organisations has not been a good one. In very simple terms, the cost of getting it wrong could be disastrous in terms of returns. Conversely, and highly impactful if you get it right over the life cycle of your investment. The obvious question, which leader would you want to appoint? Clearly, the impact leader A has had on the organisation, both in terms of revenue over time, or impact with over time, must make it worthwhile and easily worth the investment of time and money in order to secure her. So what do you need to look for when hiring a leader, other than skills, expertise, a proven track record, and solid references? Referring back to the example of the CEO that I gave you a few moments ago, what was about him that was so impactful on the business he was responsible for leading? He was strategic. He was a charismatic leader. The owners invested time in ensuring that he possessed all of the skills and competencies they required, as well as completing robust due diligence on him and proving his track record. They ensured that their business was aligned with his motivations and the reasons for doing what he did. This purpose, and purpose is the critical word here, drove him and the organisation he was with. It was aligned with both him, it was aligned with him and the investors, and together with his ability to be able to communicate this authentically to his staff and his team, resulted in delivering success that he has and continues to do so. So if there's one thing that I'd like you to take away from this presentation, please let it be this. Above all else, you need to ensure that your chosen leader is purpose-driven and is aligned with your business and its reasons for existing. And he is able to communicate this authentically and effectively to everyone within the organisation. Why is it important that employees are aware of purpose? Because recent and numerous studies have shown that if it matters to employees, then they will be highly engaged and deliver much better results. So your leader must be, so in order to find that you get the right leader, your leader must be somebody that you've identified and selected through a tough and diligent process to ensure that you've got the best possible leader that's available. A planned and detailed assessment needs to be taken place to ensure that either he or she has the track record that can ensure success within your role. The leader's purpose and why needs to be aligned with yours and your organisations, so and to ensure as well that they can communicate this to all the employees. So let me share with you what Sarah and I and the rest of EIA believe is the recruitment process that you should invest time in to ensure that you're able to identify the best possible purpose-driven leader for your business. It's a straightforward 4-stage process. But the critical thing is that you must invest time up front and plan accordingly. I'm sure when you're making an investment in a business, you invest time in completing the due diligence and all aspects, across all aspects of the business that you're investing in. The potential return, the sector, political and economic risks, just to name a few, foreign exchange, liquidity, governance, the existing management team, all the things that were mentioned by my friend earlier when we were talking virtually online. And when you're hiring, you should do exactly the same. You need to invest time to plan, align, and prepare. The first stage is getting access to the candidates, getting the best pool of individuals for you to choose from. Recently, we've been working with a client who was looking to identify a leader at board level for one of their portfolio businesses based in East Africa. Separate meetings were held with each of the stakeholders, all of which were different investors, to understand what they required. Then a final review with all of them to ensure that they were completely aligned in terms of technical skills, experience, the competencies required, and more importantly, the impact they needed this individual to make. An interesting fact, did you know that 4 out of 5 leaders that were eventually hired for the roles that we've experienced weren't actually looking to move and may not be within your network? You need to map the whole market, the whole candidate pool, to ensure that you're getting the best availability of candidates. And not just within the sector that you operate in, but also within adjacent sectors, because they too will contain profiles of individuals that will have the skills that you're looking for. It's also important to mention with the example I gave you, this was a confidential role. So you have to be cautious when you're approaching these individuals for this position. And it was even more critical in this one because they needed to ensure that the business itself wasn't destabilised and the information wasn't leaked to a wide audience within the sector that they operated within. The other thing to reflect on is that as 4 or 5 of them aren't looking for a role and you've identified them and you've approached them directly, they're not looking to move. It's absolutely critical that you can articulate to them the reasons why they should consider this opportunity and why they should be motivated to join and move your organisation. And that message needs to be consistent right from the initial point of contact through to the final negotiations at the end of the process. And every single stakeholder needs to be absolutely aligned with what you're saying. The second stage, so once you've actually approached your potential leaders, how do you effectively assess them and choose the right person? I'm sure all of you have your own internal processes for assessing a potential individual for a particular role that you're recruiting for. Different organisations have different ways of ensuring that they're investing in the right leader and that he or she represents the best person that can deliver the results, or the best person in the market that can deliver the results that the business requires. Having been party to and completed over 650 assignments at Executives in Africa, we've seen some excellent processes, and we've also seen some not so excellent processes. Reviewing the best of the ones that have taken place over the last 18 months, and the majority of these have all been virtually, with the candidate and the client actually not meeting face-to-face, or if they do, right at the end of the process. They've all included these 3 things. 1, a number of well-structured competency-based interview meetings with different stakeholders, and each one with a different focus. The use of personality and psychometric testing, verifying that you've got the right thoughts or they're backing up the thoughts that you've picked up during your interview process. And just on a side, when we were working recently with a client that decided to use graphology at this point in their process. And it was actually the slant of the individual's handwriting that they'd made the decision on which person they should hire. We were slightly sceptical, and to be fair, they had run a very robust process prior to that, but there are ways of using not just the run-of-the-mill psychometric testing. There are other things that are available to you. Every single one of these successful processes also had a written case study or presentation. Absolutely critical, especially with a leader, to see how they perform at a board level, how they perform potentially to investors, to make sure they're able to represent and put across a compelling enough argument for either people to join, for a decision to be made in the business, or an investment to be made within the organisation. And in addition to those three things, every single organisation that we dealt with was absolutely clear on what their purpose was as a business and the journey they were taking and the point they were at before they reached their destination. And through this process, they were able to ensure that that individual that they hired was not only aware of what their organisation's purpose was, but equally was able to align himself, and they were certain that he was aligned to the purpose of that business, and that's why they selected them. Stages 3 and 4. So having assessed the best pool of candidates in the market, and then by running a thorough and diligent selection process, the final two stages of the process are negotiation and retention. Let's deal with negotiation. To be honest, I believe this is an area where the majority of you excel. You're all experts in negotiation and ensuring that you get the best commercial terms. So you don't need me to stand here and tell you how to do that. And retention. LTIPs are the standard way and universally used to retain the interest and the financially and the commitment of the individual within the role. So any project, around sort of any projects that you're hiring for, again, I wouldn't suggest to use anything other than the LTIPs as a way of securing those people in the long term. But if I was to give you one piece of advice during these final two stages of the process, it's this: a lack of momentum and lack of communication can kill the interest of the most enthusiastic candidate or individual. So it's critical that this is maintained throughout what can be quite a lengthy stage. Let me just give you an example of what I consider to be a masterclass by a client of communication and momentum. Last year we were working with an organisation that were recruiting a CEO for a greenfield operation in Southwest Africa. A superb candidate had been identified, assessed, and an offer made. But whilst the investment was secured, the final negotiations with the government in granting the lease took slightly longer than they thought it was going to. And from the point of offer to actually getting the licence required was nearly 4 months. And it wasn't actually eventually confirmed until December. Throughout that period of negotiation with the government, whilst they had this individual identified, there was continual and proactive from their side communication, regular updates, meetings, involvement in strategic planning and budget preparations. And this ensured his continual engagement throughout this process, and mitigated the risk of potentially losing him, and resulted in them making a successful appointment. So to summarise, make sure you select your leader through a diligent and thorough process from all the candidates or the individuals that are available, ensuring they're not just limited to the best individuals that you can see from your network. A planned and a detailed assessment ensures that you're able to assess all of the individuals and find those individuals and put them into place. The leader's purpose and his why, or her why, has to be aligned to you and your organisation. So you need to ensure that you know what yours is. You need to ensure how you communicate that and make sure that you're able to assess the leaders that you're talking to make sure you find the one that is as closely aligned as possible. But equally as important is that they're able to authentically communicate this to all the employees, ensuring that they are also aligned with what's happening in the business, ensuring then and guaranteeing the success of the investment that you're making. And finally, the other takeaway was to maintain constant communication and momentum throughout the process. It's been good to meet some of you first in 3D after sort of nearly 2 years of not being able to attend events, so good to see you. I hope that in the limited time that I've had available, I've given you some interesting points to think about, but please do seek myself or Sarah the lady down here in orange, if you have any further questions that you'd like to talk to us about, as well as my team are also based here, and you'll be able to find them around our stand, which is P19. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for your attention. Thank you. Thank you, James.
Thank you very much. We'll now be taking a short break for coffee or similar, and we'll be reconvening around 11 o'clock for an investment panel and that will be led by Hazel Taylor, the Director for Investor Relations at CDC. Richard, thank you. Graham, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of ACSIC.